Today our focus is globalisation. What's going on around the world? What's this digital utopia that we're promised? Who's behind it? What sort of controls are going to be put in place and what's the impact on you? Join us now as we discuss globalisation. It started really, people started to become even more aware of it earlier in the year when in Dubai had a seminar and they talked about moving from analogue to digital, a new world order. And people jumped on that and they said, oh, new world order, and it became a bit conspiratorial. But really what they were saying was, the economic advisor who was talking to that in the session was talking about efficiencies and promoting that whole kind of, ability to centralise and get more information across. But it talks to the WEF's core philosophy, which is there is one world, right?
Yeah.
And not a number of nations. Let's go to that. Nick, any opening thoughts?
Well, yeah, only that I think a number of people felt that it had been sort of stuck in while there were so many distractions in the global environment.
Yes.
With COVID-19, obviously, is a big talking point for everyone. All the things the governments were doing with COVID. And then people started to realise, well, actually, there's a number of other little legislative advancements that have been happening while these big distractions are taking up all of everyone's mind space, if you like. And
they've been working on them for quite some time.
That's right. And digitisation of identity, and also centralising, just bringing together all the various different platforms that we interact with all through our lives under single banners, government-controlled banners, has been one of these things that's been rolling out.
Yeah, and now people are kind of going, well, what is actually going on? Let's talk about the EU first of all, because recently they came out and said, people are a bit concerned about where their data goes, and we need a trusted system. So apparently the EU are the guys that we can trust with our data if you're in European geographies.
Yeah.
Not for us, of course. And Italy recently, there's in Bologna, in one of the provinces, there's a move to a system where they have a smart citizen wallet. And they reward citizens for I don't know, they'll make up their minds what they're going to reward them for. It's not a penalising system, it's rewarding. Right. But what it struck me was curious was smart citizen. So if you don't get it, Nick, you're a dumb citizen.
Well, it's interesting because I assumed it meant a smart wallet, and it was really the idea that digitising all of the things that you would otherwise carry in your wallet, your Medicare card, your social services card if you're in other countries, your bank account access, obviously, any aspect of your identity, your library cards, all of these things all get digitised all together. So, these key words that we'll keep hearing: smart, efficiency, trusted.
Yeah, but they put citizen between smart, so the adjective was smart citizen. Right. So that's.
Well, as someone who doesn't have a smartphone, I must admit it is a dumb citizen move.
But that's a pilot program in Italy, which is within Europe, and you've got that broader comment from the EU, leaders saying about how we need a trusted system. In Nigeria recently, they just blocked 73 million phones because they hadn't signed on to the identity system, and so their phones were blocked and they couldn't use them. Now, people in Africa, as we do, rely heavily on their phones, so this is punitive if you don't meet the criteria.
Yeah.
Right? So this is the point of the centralisation, which we'll come to shortly. In Canada, and you'll love this, in Canada, they've been looking at a system for travel.
Yeah. So this
and that's in association with who?
In association with the WEF. So this is the known traveller, the KTDI identity system.
And we'll put the website on screen for you. The question here is, what is the WEF doing in alliance with Canada to work out a travel system for Canadians? What?
That's right.
What is their point of authority or relevance?
And when you see the different parties that are promoting these things, you can't help but notice that caring about digitisation and caring about efficiency is not the only thing that they have in common. No, there's an ideological alignment very much that you see, which is what I think we've got to fall in the long run. What drives this ideal of globalising things, of centralising things, and I think that behind it there is this belief that humanity kind of has all of the tools in our grasps to run everything and to control everything and to solve all our problems and answer them. And that real faith in humanity often, and also among those who are the leaders, who are the elites, faith in themselves, really. We all have faith in ourselves, but it's not always well placed.
So give me your data, give me your life, let me put it in
and
a
I'll manage it better than you will.
Oh, okay, right, good. So
I trust it.
And we'll run that from Davos or somewhere like that. So I mean, this is quite, well, it's arrogant, but it's also fallacious. Like, will this really work? It doesn't.
Work?
But why is the WEF in Canada coming up with a system so that when Canadians go to leave the country, presumably this is where it can go, and it can easily go there. You go to book a flight, and you're not able to. You're not able to complete the purchase because of some violation of
And so that and of course for a lot of people who are concerned about it, that is the worry. So as you digitize all these different aspects of identity and tie it all into one digital persona that starts to then interface with the real world, like my ability to get on an aeroplane, then you have an opportunity. The government has the ability very easily now to tie my access to different things to all the different aspects of my life, and that's where the Chinese social credit system, for instance, that's really worried.
That's the extreme, and people will say, well, you're getting a little bit carried away here. But 2 years ago, when you talked about this, people said, the vax passes and so forth, that will never go there. That's a conspiracy theory. Well, within 15 to 18 to 24 months, we have moved towards this very sharply. So cast forward in 2 or 3 years, what could this look like? And the moves in New Zealand, we've already flagged and talked to, are actually concerning people. Australia, we've got the Trusted Digital Identity Framework, and this links back to censorship and online activity and so on. And the way they're talking about this is with lots of lovely words like seamless, safe. It's for your economic safety. It was for public health safety before, and now it's economic safety. It's smart. We know the smart citizen. We've got sustainable. All these S words. There must have been a special on S words at some point. And of course, stakeholder economies. So these are, and the big one, trusted. So trust us with your life, basically.
And yet, if we look, because I think it's interesting that Canada has been the one that wanted to partner with the WEF to do this pilot run of their travel-related issues, especially after what we've seen happen in Canada with their implementation of vaccine passports, border controls, isolating people in many hotels monitoring at the border, was some of the most extreme around the world, and really blew up in their faces with the trucker protests and all of those things, with everyone saying, hang on a moment, there's a reason why we were called the free world. And that freedom really meant that there were aspects of the individual's life that were inviolable, and your ability to travel, your ability to move around, at least within your own country, but also your ability to not be monitored, not be watched all the time, have a degree of privacy. That was what that freedom meant.
Well, there was individual,
and there's no respect for that anymore.
Well, there's individual sovereignty, there's national sovereignty, and the theme here is globalisation, and you can argue that it's for efficiencies and moving from analogue to digital. We get all that, right? But what the ideology and the philosophy and the worldview coming through that is to give central control to another party, and they don't seem to want national borders and national.
Absolutely. And if you go to the WEF,
there is one world. It's a reset.
And if you go to the WEF website, the World Economic Forum that has their forum in Davos and another of other platforms as well, you'll find a lot of really interesting catchphrases that seem to have a lot of academic weight behind them. The triple bottom line, the fourth industrial revolution, the circular economy. You mentioned before stakeholder economics, which was called as their flagship thing. And you find these big mind maps with all of this terminology around it. And it's all very interesting. You think, they're just combating the world's problems. What's so threatening about that? But the problem that is within it is there is this ideology of centralising control and believing that human advancement is in the hands of all humans working together as one kind of global
so it's humanism
project. It's humanism. And they really gave the game away a few years ago with their catchphrase, which was, you will own nothing and be happy.
Well, just on that, I mean, no one ever has been able to really describe and define what that actually means. But some of the key people supporting and affiliated with WF, such as Bill Gates.
Yeah, Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, well, Bill Gates is running around buying lots of farmland in the USA. So whilst the WEF, and he is affiliated, is saying own nothing and be happy, well, how do you know I'll be happy, and how will it measure that, and what gives you the right kind of to say that?
Yeah.
But in contrast to that, he's buying and owning a lot of farmland.
That's right.
So we're not living what we preach here.
That's the thing with what we've been calling elites, is the idea they do trust themselves, implicit trust in themselves.
So that's a rule for me, but not for you.
That's right. So I can be trusted to own everything. I can be trusted to control it, but you can't be trusted. And that own nothing, be happy, the more you think about it, you're like, so, okay, I don't own my house anymore. I don't own my car. I
can rent it from somebody.
That's right. I'm renting it from, so it's part of some large system that someone else is facilitating.
And every transaction I make will be monitored and so forth, right?
But then who does own it?
Well,
who is controlling it? Because to own something is to control it. And so own nothing and you'll be happy really is central control. And it's been tried before in a very real world sense. It's called communism, and it causes absolute devastation of economies in reality.
Well, this is techno-fascism now. I mean, the word communism, sort of when it's said by people, they have images of 1949 in China or Stalin.
That's true. They start thinking gulags and whatnot, going right to the consequence and forgetting what the small ideology that starts it.
But this is techno-fascism. And techno as in the digital technocracy, the centralisation of data, and the ability to actually map and monitor and have a view into the lives of people. And what you said before is that allows a degree of control. And these people, it's a really good point, because who will control it? Well, it won't be you. Yeah, that's for sure. And why would someone want to take control of those facets of your life? Well, we'll have a look in a moment at Glenn Beck's piece, because he kind of gets arrested by the words here from the WEF, and it's quite interesting. But people are now starting to wake up to this. But what, the understory here is the who, the why, and the what. And don't be, people have been looking at, at medical events and reactions and so forth, and rates and clinical trials, and getting caught on that. But that was a mechanism to usher in a new environment. And they have, under the cover of that, as you said before, they have brought in these things. They've been working on these things for a long time. This doesn't happen overnight. And now the report coming through that 80% of central banks are now working on a digital currency. So streaming into this is a centralised digital currency for the smart wallets, with centralised blockchain data to map, monitor and review what people are doing. So there is a push here. The problem is that the philosophy and the value set behind it, we don't share it. Yeah. Right? And we won't, but if we don't control it, who will control it? And starting to get a little bit, starting to get a little bit serious, I think, in terms of where this goes. And I
think so. And I think it is an evidence that there is a mindset that has been taking over in our society. It's part of that, the march of the left through the institutions, that there is a mindset of humanism, of assuming that we have the levers, and through academia, through thinking, through bringing together those who are powerful, they can come up with a solution that everyone else should follow. Yeah. And arrogance was the word you used earlier.
Well, it's an intellectual arrogance.
It's an intellectual arrogance, but because also it's a very broad and deep mindset, it does mean no matter what different issues they address, it will always become a vehicle for centralisation and for rolling out that mindset more, whether it's climate change, whether it's COVID-19, whether it's identity and travel and borders and war. Anything that they touch, it's going to be that mindset of mankind has the tools, that if we just put the elites in charge, if we just put the right group of clever people together.
It's Babel Mark II, is it?
It's Babel Mark II.
I think the Great Reset is not going to control every aspect of your life. Let me give you a couple of things. They are now taking the next step to shape global, regional, and industry agendas, end quote, with a new digital ID system. Under the framework, the WEF proposes collecting data from many aspects of people's everyday lives. That's a quote. Through their devices, telecommunication networks, and third-party service providers. The WEF suggests that this data collection dragnet would allow a digital ID. Now listen to this, it's very narrow. It would allow a digital ID to scoop up data on people's online behavior, purchase history, network usage, credit history, biometrics, names, national identity numbers, and medical history. Plus your travel history, social accounts, e-government accounts, bank accounts, energy uses, health stats, education, and I love this one, and more. What's left? Once the digital ID has access to this huge, highly personal set of data, the WEF proposes using it to decide whether users are allowed to, quote, own and use devices, quote, open bank accounts, quote, carry out online financial transactions, quote, conduct business transaction, quote, access insurance and treatment, book trips, still quoting, go through border control between countries or regions, still quoting, access third-party services that rely on social media logins, file taxes, vote, collect benefits, end quote. So, you know that passport that they gave you? It was so crazy to think that maybe that COVID passport might grow into something, exactly like
If
this.
somebody else takes control of my life through the facility of data and transactions and that sort of thing, if somebody else can take control of the life, I'm not in control, we get that, right? But who is? Well, them. But you could argue that God is in control, right? God should be in control. So there's a supplanting here of not just national borders, but there's a supplanting of a divine order. So this is the elevation of the human. That's what you were talking about before, the humanism. And it's like this intellectual arrogance, conceit of riches, whatever fuels it, it ends up at the same place, right? So what does this look like? Well, it looks anti-God. That's what it looks like. And this is why this is not political. There's worldview and this value set driving behind this, and some of them will be more well-meaning, and they'll be saying, well, we can be more efficient and we can cross-border transactions, and I get it. It's true. A lot of that's true, but who controls it?
Yeah, that's right.
And that's really the problem for the world. And talking about Australia, there's a number of people here who have been identified as being graduates from the WEF program. And we'll just put the link up there on screen for people to have a look at. And that includes recently Jessica Malboy as a singer. There's celebrities, there's academics, there's climate activists, there's politicians. There's all sorts of people. The WEF has been extremely strategical in this over a long period of time. Arguably half of Trudeau's cabinet are WEF graduates from the Young Global Leaders program. So these people are positioned across a number of countries, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and so on. And they are there believing in this utopian agenda, So a lot of them will be well-meaning and idealistic perhaps, but hopeful of a better world. So that's possibly what fuels a lot of them.
But what's really important with creating a better world is that you successfully diagnose what's wrong with the current one. And that's where you always get the problem, because they believe humans are a solution. And as Christians, we actually think humans are the problem. Like, if we look at this world and we say the real problem is humans need to be to be constrained. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, and we want to distribute power and have checks and balances. We don't want to concentrate it. And so there's, on one hand, there's the religious mindset and the things that we can understand from a Christian worldview, knowing about the fall and depravity, but also knowing that we believe God provides everything. But there's also the logical, the rational, secular analysis, and I would direct people to Thomas Sowell.
Yes.
So he's got a handful of very good books. One that I was alluding to a moment ago is called A Conflict of Visions. It talks about the constrained vision, the unconstrained. The constrained says humans are the problem, if you like, that things going wrong is a natural outcome in the world order. And so we need to actually constrain problems and have checks and balances, whereas unconstrained take the opposite perspective. But the other very good book for the broader issue we're talking about today is Intellectuals and Society. It just talks about this notion that a group of people at the middle of things can have all the academic and abstract knowledge to solve the world's problems, where in reality, when we're solving problems, it's often mundane knowledge and specific knowledge, not the abstract knowledge that matters.
Right.
And so they had a principle, I know I'm going on a little bit here, but a principle in politics called the Principle of Subsidiarity, which says that the best level at which to govern things is as local as possible,
yes,
not as global as possible.
Yeah.
And so things like town planning, someone sitting in Canberra
how does that
can't
work?
handle town planning.
And that's a really good point, because how does this work, globalisation? Because that's true. I mean, we live locally, we have community, we have relationships, we have interactions, but this global thing is actually going to somehow centrally control and kind of efficiently manage this. I mean, it's laughable. But so the sell is on efficiency and, you know, integration of data and, you know, cross relationships and so on. But it doesn't really work, and it can't really work because people do live locally, and so this is, you know, the way they're selling this, the way they're promoting this, and, you know, there's comments before from Glenn Beck's article, is like, wow, it's just a little bit scary, because this is every facet of your life which is going to be mapped and monitored and reviewed and controlled potentially. And so, you know, this is going on in real time around us. This is a 10 to 20 year program which is now starting to reveal itself. Where it goes, you know, potentially you could say, oh, people say, well, you're a conspiracy. Well, you don't have to be Einstein to see where this could track very quickly. And
yet you look at what happened in Russia after their leftist revolution that really brought out this idea of centralising. They collectivised the farms. It resulted in 10 million people dying. It really was real world consequences from an abstract ideology that was allowed to run rampant. But we're then too pessimistic when it comes to God, that he can put a stop to this. He did curse the world at Babel with, and in a sense, it is actually the culture clashes between different language groups still that actually present the world working as one global order. You know, what's happening with Russia and Ukraine at the moment.
So here we go again, but this time it'll be better. Trust me, it's trusted. You know, you can trust us, says the EU.
And it's because Western intellectuals are still in love with the ideology that drove all that.
Right. There's a residual romance.
They still believe in it. They say, it can work. Surely it can work.
And now the mechanism, so the ideology is there, still is there, the romance is still there.
Yeah.
The mechanism now, the difference is to go from analog to digital and to use that as the promise for a better world. Yeah. If we can go digital, we get the efficiencies and we can actually create this better world that we all long for in our hearts. The only problem is, the real problem for me, is that this means somebody else controls my destiny and it's not me. So the question is who? And, you know, through all of this, the one common actor through all of this is the WEF. It's just astounding.
And at the moment, it really does seem that way. They're pushing this digitisation. They've got all of their different catchphrases and buzzwords, and they've really got their fingers in all the pies.
Yeah. So you know, the WHO is moving for a international health program, which will, you know, subvert borders, digital currencies
bypass national sovereignty.
National sovereignty. So it's game on, folks. We've got to be in the game. And we've got to know who we are. And I was talking to somebody, and he said, "Well, why did you decide to, you know, go with the mandate?" And he said, "Well, I ordered my Starbucks." So that was his price to get a Starbucks. So we've got to be a bit more resilient. Talk about resilience. We've got to be a bit more resilient than that, and hang in there and actually know what the threats are and know what we can do. Coming back to it. So that's kind of a little bit of an update and some references there for you to dig into and have a look more closely at some of this information, because this really is the space that's going to be contested over the next 12, 18, 24 months. You know, I mean, not just in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, UK, Europe, Italy, wherever. This is the program. Thanks very much.